recording. And here we go. Cool. So, hi everyone. We do record this so that we're able to put it out on the internet after the fact, just in case folks aren't able to make it for whatever reason, or they lost the Zoom link, or, they forgot. My name is Sam, they, them pronouns. I am the youth programs coordinator for DiscNY. I am sort of half facilitating and half taking notes, so excuse me if I'm muted and typing for a bit. But this is our annual Meet the Candidates call. So for folks running for the DiscNY board, we have some folks here who are on the board running for new positions, some who are not yet on the board running for positions, and some who are on the board and outgoing. We're going to do a quick just intros, and then there's a couple questions that we ask people to discuss. And then some of it is open time for folks in the community to ask questions. If you want to ask each other questions, be my guest. Um, but yeah, so we can start with folks who are currently running. Basically, just names, pronouns, where you're from, what position you're running for on the board. If you want to share a little bit about your ultimate background or your background with DiscNY, please feel free. Can be anyone, but someone has to start.
I guess I'll start. So my name's Noah Silo Carroll, and I am running, I believe, for the at-large spot 2 years, I want to say. I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey, went to Rutgers for 4 years, where I was on the B team, all 4 years, B team for life. I lived in San Diego for 10 years, where I played lots of Ultimate all year round. One of the great things about San Diego is the beautiful weather. We actually played, beach league during the winter on the real beach. So that's one thing I do miss from San Diego. And when I lived there, I was on the board of what used to be called DUDE, Diego Ultimate Disc Experience. And since we realized we had sort of a problematic name, we changed the name of the organization to SD Ulti, or SDU, San Diego Ultimate. And while I was on the board, we partnered with the professional teams in San Diego. We partnered with another organization that organized Frisbee related leagues and stuff in San Diego. We had a bunch of different leagues ourselves, tournaments, things like that. So now that I'm here in New York, I'd like to continue, to help expand the Ultimate community, become more involved. And so I thought one way to do that was to join DiscNY.
You can pick someone to popcorn to, or I can pick someone, or someone can volunteer.
I'll
Three,
go.
two, one spoon. Oh, just kidding.
Then I'll go next. Um, I'm Katie Walker. I'm running for the president seat on the board this year. I just finished a year as an at-large member of the board, and that was my first year on the board. I am connected to Ultimate because both of my sons started playing Ultimate here in the city, and I've never played actually myself. So the rest of the board has been trying to get me to go to Adult Learning League, which I am going to do. I just need it to not be at 10 p.m. So, but I love Ultimate, and I love the community that we have from Ultimate, and I think that it's something that needs to continue to grow and take over soccer. So here I am to help and do everything that we can to ensure that we can do that.
All right, so I'm next, I guess. Um, can everyone hear me? It's good. Great. Hi, I'm Spoon. I'm Chris Nelson. I'm longtime community member, player in New York City. Been playing frisbee for a long time. Been coaching for a ton. I've coached at many different levels. I guess I've always worked in and around DiscNY, from getting involved with the high school league back in the day, to then coaching a lot of high school, coaching a lot of middle school, and coaching college now as my primary coaching gig. I'm super excited to be working more with DiscNY and running for this at-large position. I think it's a 2 years role. Um, I just see so much good in New York City Ultimate. So many like pockets of people doing amazing things, and I just want to connect those people with each other because I feel like there's so much good growth everyone's like so excited about, but New York can be very isolating. It can be very much like everyone gets in their own silos. So I see our job as DiscNY is really to like bring people together and kind of find what our community is looking for and missing so that we can grow more and get to the places we want to be. Um, yeah, I'm really excited. I honestly think we have a great roster of like candidates for this year. Like whoever gets on the board, I think there's going to be some really good work to be done. So I'm excited. Yeah. I don't know who to popcorn to, so Sam, you can choose someone.
We'll go either for JLo or Ben, and then we'll come back around.
Yeah, I can go. Hi, I'm John, or Jonathan Lau, my mother calls me. I use he, him pronouns. Um, I am running for the at-large position for the 1 year. And yeah, I've been a long time DiscNY member, over 10 years at this point, just sort of wild to say out loud. Mostly through the adult programming. So a lot of through the leagues as well as through the club season in the summer. And more recently, I've done some more volunteering. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting more involved with DiscNY and working with everyone here. Um, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Sorry, I can go. Hi, I'm Ben. Use he, him pronouns. I am running for the 2 year at large member. I think that's the right way to say that. Um, where am I from? I'm originally from Kansas, but I haven't lived there in a really long time. I have lived in a bunch of places and played Ultimate in a lot of places. And I have been in New York since 2019. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So like 7 years, which is also crazy, maybe not 10, of doing desk and Y stuff. Um, and part of the reason that I'm running is that I'm a real sucker for community engagement. I think that community is super important, and something I've been really thankful for with Ultimate in general is just like wherever you go, wherever you live, there's always like friends, things to do. Like it's a really special thing. And that sort of thing doesn't just exist on its own. It takes like work and intention to make. And so being a part of that is something that I want to do. I've been coaching various levels in New York. I've been coaching in one of the boys' high school teams for the past few years, like 2021. Um, and yeah, this seemed like another really good way to sort of give back to a community that's given me a lot. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. And then we have a couple, I think Otto, you're the last one who's running for a different seat this year.
Yes. Hi, my name's Otto. He, him pronouns. I am ending my term as an at-large member, 2 years, and running for the secretary position. Um, I am from New Jersey, played undergrad and grad school frisbee there, and played in Jersey for a while. Served on the McCullough board, and then moved to New York. I've been here 3 years and have been part of the Disc and White board. Um, I hear a lot of stuff from everybody who talked, that I feel that I felt, especially when I wanted to join the board. Sense of community, giving back, wanting to be involved and make my community better. It's been a very welcoming community, both as a player, um, and as a volunteer here on the board. And I just want to, the reason I'm running is really to continue the great work that the board has been doing, and with new programming, with better administrative kind of infrastructure, with a strategic plan. So I'm excited to continue that great work, and I really love seeing everybody be passionate about joining. I don't know who's next. Oh, you got it, Sam. Yeah.
Thank you all. So we also have a couple outgoing board members here. I will also mention that we don't have Aaron Faylona, who is one of our at-large members, or Matt McLaughlin, MCL, is our treasurer. They're not here tonight. But we do have BCAP, Zach, and Shannon. If you want to say a quick thing, there are 3 outgoing board members this term.
Sure, I am the outgoing secretary. I have been on the board for 4 years. I started as an at-large member. I think Haley Manning was the secretary, and then she left the next year, and I stepped into the role, and so I've been doing it 3 years. Um, Otto, I think, are you the only one running for secretary from what I see? So that's awesome. Yeah. So I'll have a chat with Otto about the extra difficult responsibilities he's going to have on his plate now as secretary. But regardless of the role, I think you all already know this, but everybody on the board is equally valuable and voices are equally heard. And I'm excited for all of you to have whatever role you have.
I will go next. I am Shannon, she, her. I also am leaving the board. I have been on for 3 years, 3 amazing years. We really accomplished a lot. I'm really proud of the efforts, and I'm not going very far. I'm just stepping off the board, but I'm a huge committee gal, and we're about to have a lot of committees, hopefully. So that's where I'll be.
Hi, I'm BCAP, she, her. I'm the outgoing president. I've been on the board for 5 years. The first year was at large, and then I replaced Mickey as the third president. Has not been around. This New York's been around, I think, since what, 2010, 2012. So not that many presidents. But excited for Katie to step into the role. And yeah, I'm having a baby, so that's why I'm leaving. Not because I don't like being on the board. I love being on the board.
Excuses, excuses.
But I will be around also in New York, but like limited capacity. But really excited to see new faces. It brings me lots of joy.
I suppose I should also add, as the only one who didn't say this, I also have a bunch of projects lined up with DiscNY, and I'll be around. Not going anywhere.
Once you're in, you're in. Um, so just to clarify as well, we do have, I believe it's 2 open 2-year at-large seats and an open special election for a single year, unless I'm misquoting myself, in which case Colin will someday correct me. Voting procedures will come out after this. So the next phase of this is really just some questions for current candidates to answer. You don't have to answer every one. If you don't feel like you have something that you can add to the conversation, that's totally fine. We don't need to sit here and listen to each other say the same thing 10 times. We kind of touched already on why you're running for the board, but one of the things we like to ask people is what ideas you have that you'd be passionate about championing, excuse me, in your first year or two on the board. Anyone who wants to can take a stab at it. You can also have a think.
So I think someone might mention this already, but I think sort of trying to consolidate all of the, there are multiple ultimate related organizations around New York, who organize tournaments and leagues and various events. I think it would be nice to sort of help consolidate, information. And I know DiscNY already has a lot of that, but I'd love to see if we can, do that even more. So again, that there's one place that everyone can kind of look up and see everything. And again, I know DiscNY already has probably a lot of that, and I am new to DiscNY and the New York Ultimate community, but I know in San Diego that was really helpful to gather, for example, all of the different pickup games going on, and to list that on the website, just so people know, oh yeah, there's this one on Saturday, there's this one on Thursdays, this one you have to sign up for, this one you can just show up, things like that.
I can go next. That's so I know other candidates have definitely touched on this through their candidate statements, particularly what Spoon said about coaching resources. From where I'm coming from, What I've had noticed as so one thing that I do for DiscNY is I've been helping run the Lunar New Year hat tournament every year, and especially the first year that we ran the tournament, or the first and second year. Hat tournaments have been around, New York forever, but the first time creating a tournament has a bit more logistics and friction and trouble figuring out how things work, a bit more than you would expect for something that is sort of done year after year. Um, so I would love to be able to create more accessible resources for people who want to create events like that, or whether it's a hat tournament or a new program or um, something or a new league or anything like that. It's Having been around DiscNY for a long time, I've seen different sort of events get spearheaded by different people. They're around for 1 or 2 years, and then life moves on, and that event sort of goes away with them because no one can pick it up. So it'd be great to have much more publicly available resources for people who want to step up and volunteer and create new events. And I think I saw a big corollary with other people's candidate statements in terms of coaching. People who want to be coached, but maybe don't have the know-how or the exact resources of what that entails. We have a great community with a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge and specific expertise in various things, and I think we need to do a better job of plugging people together.
Just kind of building on what everyone's kind of already saying and, pushing it forward. I think we have so many different like leagues, so many different high school teams, middle school teams. We have so many different, levels of play, but each of the people in those levels of play aren't necessarily learning from each other. And so like best practices get lost because like Jayla was saying, right? Like you start something and then you maybe run it for 2 years, but you encounter difficulties, and maybe those are difficulties that other people in the same position have overcome or have encountered themselves. And like I feel like we need to bring those people together who are engaging with the same problem to be able to come up with best practices and have easier entry points for volunteers, for people running organizations, and then easier kind of learning, right? Like if someone's already running a hat tournament and, for the Lunar Hat Tournament, and then we have a July 4th hat tournament, right? Like having someone understudy that tournament would make a lot of sense to me, right? And that creates like an easier community connection, buy-in, and just like better community, like we're learning from each other. So that's one way I'm thinking of like building out horizontally is like establishing best practices. And then I'd also like to build vertically. I'd like to connect communities that um, seem to be structured against each other's interests, but are really in part of an entire spectrum of our community, right? So like the beginners, ultimate frisbee friends, right? The buff and the adult learning leagues. I think those are excellent, but I still see so much of a disconnection of like, okay, I did buff, now where do I go, right? Is league too hard to enter? Is, pick up the right vibe, right? Like we have all these things of people are in our community, but they don't know where to go. So I think guideposts like what Noah's talking about of like all the things, and then what Jayla's talking about easier coaching stuff, easier learning, right? Like those are just I'm happy that everyone's talking about the same stuff, right? Because it means that we're all excited about solving the same problems, and that's really cool. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to.
And I would like to add, I think with San Diego Ultimate, they had a lot of documentation, including sort of a calendar that said like, hey, for Winter League, you want to book the fields by this month. You want to, send out, applications, or basically the timing for everything. Like if you're running a weekend tournament, this is how far in advance you need to do this, this, and this. So, a calendar like that. And again, documentation for every event that you run so that, yeah, the next person doesn't have to have done it previously. They can be like, okay, it's 2 months away. I better have a field booked.
For sure. And I will also just pop in briefly and say that this is stuff that we've started to do as best we're able in the past couple months as we also start transitioning we've just started transitioning to a new Google Drive after a very long time. So we're going back through and finding things that are duplicates, trying to talk to commissioners and download information, trying to pull, permitting information out of people who have that information siloed. Cough, cough, Steve. Um, but yeah, it's really encouraging to hear new folks coming in and talking about the same things, being able to build on what we've started.
Can I give a piece of info that might be helpful to those of you running for the board? I guess why would you say no? I don't know why that was a question. But just to like frame your ideas a little bit, like we in the last 5 years, we've been really moving from an operational board to an advisory board. And it's been with a lot of growing pains, but some of what you all are talking about is operations, which means our employees handle, and then the ideas around it would be more of like an advisory role. So we're just so you know, the direction we're like going is advisory, but in that change, there's a lot of sort of like you get into the nitty gritty, but like to take the load, the like operational load off of the board, we're like in the process of handing that to employees. Just so you know. So some of the like nitty gritty stuff, like you wouldn't have to be doing, but it's like
So,
advising, like, oh, this is a systems idea, but you wouldn't have to like go in and do it, if that makes
so I
sense.
guess a question about that. Can you describe what, I guess, number one, the commitment level for the board is and what is done at a typical board meeting, and what it looks like, let's say month to month?
Yeah, and anyone else could chime in because like people are here, so we should share info. But yeah, more and more like the operational ideas we would have for employees, like for instance, like Sam, if we had like, oh, we want youth, like I have a great idea for like a youth program, it would probably be an offline conversation with Sam. It wouldn't happen in a board call. Our calls we're trying to have be more um, the ideas discussions that are really hard to have on like Slack. And less like, what should we do with this field that we have? Like that's more operational and like can happen with like within the employees, and doesn't always need to involve the board. While like previous board calls like 5 years ago were like, we have a field and then we talk for an hour about what to do with the field. That's no longer. But if you want to be very involved, like you can be, but
Yeah.
that
I think it's
separation is
still
has been happening for a while.
it's still in a very transitional place where like again we're figuring out best practices and what falls where. I think the example that I can give from this week is that Colin and I were talking with the commissioners of Spring League about whether or not we think it's appropriate to add a third field, and what we think operationally that changes, if we think we have the numbers for it, and then coming to the board based on that conversation with a budget proposal that is with the field, without the extra field, this markup, that markup, and it's really just an operational conversation of what makes sense on the cost end. So there's still like nitty gritty that goes on certain board call things. There are things like, org-wide strategic discussions or things like that that will happen on the board calls. But we're moving towards more of that than having the board have a say on, do we need a third field at Brooklyn Bridge Park?
And the commitment for the board is typically one call a month. For 2 hours is typically what we do, an open call at the beginning with anyone can join, and then the second hour is just the board. And we take care of, like Sam and BCAP just said, we take care of a lot of like approving more high level things, discussing stuff that's ongoing issues that we might need to step in with, and then paying attention to Slack in between those calls. And in some it kind of depends how much you want to be involved. If you are really interested in this one project and you are like volunteering additional time to like get on calls with Colin and Sam and help figure something out, then that's great. There are some people who have to do more, like Matt, who's the treasurer. He has to do more like running numbers and creating spreadsheets and things like that. But so for at-large members, it's typically you kind of go into a lane like Erin is really into the adult learning leagues and has a lot to say about how those are being run, and she's kind of like our expert on those. And then me personally, I can also answer your question in this, Sam, is the things that I want to do are improve the operations of DiscNY and just keep making it more efficient so that the board can be advisory and the staff feels empowered. It was I don't want to speak for everyone because I wasn't here many years ago, but from what I understand and what I've seen a little bit of, it started to get to be there's so many cooks in the kitchen and everyone had ideas and everyone was trying to make things happen and people were working really hard to get one thing done. And so we're trying to define those roles a little bit better so that it's more efficient.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to specifically name one of the things we are making time for as board members by delegating duties to our employees is fundraising. And fundraising is a little more vague and not exactly something that's written into the job descriptions of our employees who have very specific roles to fill to keep Frisbee happening and to bring as many people in as possible. And we've been doing a lot of that work specifically on the board, which I think has directed our focus a little bit away from fundraising. And most nonprofit boards really do need that to operate on. And if Matt were on here, he would say, like, we're getting to a point where we are not going to be able to exist for very much longer if we don't up our fundraising game. And so one of the specific things that we want to make room for board members to do, and I think each of you will hear about, and the returning board members will need to increase their focus on, is specifically that fundraising aspect. And doing that is a lot easier if we have employees we really trust to handle the operations. And I think I'll just add that I think the employees we're at right now, especially with Sam and Colin, and our bookkeeper, RJ, and a couple of the other part-time people we are bringing on is probably the best group of employees I think we've had in my time at DiscNY and certainly in the community. So I think they're more than capable of taking that on, and I know the next board will be more than capable of slipping into that advisor role that we've been looking for so long. And as far as board involvement is concerned, I think everything everybody else said is correct and a good perspective. I think from my own perspective, I remember I was like a year into my board term and BCAP was like, "Hey, can we talk?" And she was like, "Sometimes you disappear." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm traveling." And she was like, "Yeah, well, you need to let everybody know." And that seems so simple, but it was a wake-up call for me because when I was around and when I was involved, I was doing good work and I felt like I was really good. And then I think the board um, didn't really know when exactly my time commitments would be there and when they would lapse, and I didn't really do a good job at the beginning of my terms communicating that to the board. And I still think this is something I'm personally working on, but I think your involvement level can go up and down depending on your own commitments elsewhere, and that's okay. And I would advise each of you to like just identify those moments when you have a lot more to give and when you can't, and just really be communicative. Like we want to communicate with our community, of course, but talking amongst yourself on the board is really important. And so, yeah, I don't think there's a defined level of consistent necessarily time commitment you need. It'll go up and down because you're a person, and that's okay. And as long as you're open about that and let the rest of the board work with you on that, I think you'll be effective no matter how much time you have to give.
Are board meetings ever in person or are they always online?
We usually do one a year. The last one of the year has been in person. Before COVID, every single one was in person. It'll be up to you all as a new board, I think, if you'd like to have more in person. It just gets tough, the scheduling. I'm sorry if somebody else was about to say something and I got.
Shannon, if you have something quick, go ahead.
Oh, yes. I was just going to quickly add for the fundraising, not to scare anybody, because fundraising is really fun and it doesn't mean the old school like cold calling strangers and begging for money. It's not that. when you are fundraising for an organization such as DiscNY, it's so much more interactive and fun, such as putting on our first ever gala last year, which I think some of you may have been able to attend. And that would be something that we are also doing this year. And so new board members would immediately be jumping in to help put on a really epic event that showcases DiscNY's growth, success, etc. So that's one way. And then Katie, yes, I do love fundraising. And if you've seen, like through the last year, we've added the New York Road Runners Partnership. That's just easy money coming in from runners. Um, and then things like I tried the baseball. Oh, sorry. I tried to do some baseball fundraisers. So it's really like using your creative brains just as much as you would to put on different leagues in the city to just figure out ways of doing an event that makes money for the organization. It's just a slight tweak to the playing part of it. But I just wanted to throw that in because sometimes people get overwhelmed by the term fundraising and it's not as scary and hard to think about as some people put it. That's all.
Cool. Thank you. Um, so sorry, I just completely lost my place. Um, in the vein of fundraising, now that you've been thinking about it for the last few minutes, what types of fundraising events outside of our gala, outside of annual appeal stuff, do you think Disc and Y should consider? And how might you get others in the community or outside the community to support these uh, appeals?
Sure, I can jump
So
in. Oh, sorry, Noah. Did you want to go?
go for it. It's all you.
Okay, cool. I'm excited to hear what you have to say though. Um, so I was thinking about Katie actually, and I was thinking about how to get more parents involved. And I think like there needs to be a push to engage parents from the things that they care about, right? Which is the community that their kids are getting involved in, right? And more news about what those kids are facing, the celebrating their successes, right? And then presenting it as a this is a need that our kids in our community have. And wouldn't it be great if we took care of our kids in our community and got them their coaches paid and got them the proper fields and proper equipment and proper tournaments and like all the things that we would like in our community to be taken care of, to be taken care of, right? And that's really like being more present at games of like what do we need to be good fundraising materials from each event that we put on, right? Like every game should have some photos, a little bit of a write-up, right? Like we should be able to have an action report to share with parents about like this amazing game just happened and like once you know it, we're fundraising for both of these teams and this team is almost in the lead and this team's not, right? I think that's a great easy way of just like extending our reach a little bit, right? Just like plus one connection to more people that are already invested in our community because they have friends and family and kids in our community. Um, that's just something that I was thinking about doing.
So I guess what I would add is I know in San Diego we did a couple of hat tournaments to raise funds. Um, depending on how much fields cost and how much you can charge, that's a good way to raise money. Another thing I've seen in the past is you have certain donor awards, which you can probably incorporate into the gala. And again, DiscNY may have this already, so if I'm repeating something, let me know. But having the donor of the month or donor of the year, certain awards for volunteers, right? And I think this was in my answer about how to maintain volunteership, making sure people feel appreciated, but that can also have for people who have donated larger amounts, or donated a lot of their time, because you're not just raising money, right? You want to raise volunteership as well. But I think there are a lot of different ways, to raise money.
Something that I can kind of think of for this, I was originally sort of thinking about it in terms of, I think sort of how Spoon was describing like horizontally expanding community, which I think is it's a fun way of thinking about horizontal and vertical. Um, but I remember in like 2022, Disc and Y did a click league, which is sort of when you like show up with the team, and instead of just a normal league where it's you sort of sign up on your own and then get put onto teams. And it was cool because there was like a lot of people who I'd never seen came to play. Like people who had played in college, played with their friends, they all showed up together. People didn't know before and like haven't seen since. And so offering stuff like that that sort of like allows us to like sort of like broaden horizontally, right? If there's more people who are interested in playing, that is, obviously there's cost to putting on leagues, but if we can get more people as part of the community doing stuff like that, that then is also more money that comes in. So I think sort of expanding the kinds or the ways that we let people come and play together, is a way to then also raise more money just from like having more people around.
Sick. Love it. Y'all are cool. Um, trying to figure out which ones we want to hit here because I want to respect everyone's time. Um, I guess kind of going off of that, and y'all have touched on this a little bit already, but what are ways that you would bring new people into the community or bring folks back to being actively involved? And then the other part of this is, do you think that DiscNY needs to focus on growth or retention, especially in the youth area? I know that's sort of a bundle of things, so answer whatever portion of that you'd like.
I'm gonna just kind of focus on youth a little bit just because that's what I have the most experience with. I think that for youth, if we can continue to increase the amount of things that we offer for them to opportunities to play. I know that a lot of us have talked in the past about also in chances for them to like learn from the older generations. And that comes in a lot of different, there's so many different ideas for how we would do that. And I think that all of them are good and we should start thinking about them more. As far as growth versus retention, I think we unfortunately have to do both. But the interesting thing about youth is that they grow. So they age out and we can't retain them forever. So we do have to kind of always do growth. For the most part, because we got to keep getting the next generation, the next kids, the next ones, and they never stop growing. We so we should definitely be doing that, but finding ways to engage the ones like my son, who's a freshman in college right now. He's at University of Rhode Island, and he plays on their team. But when he was back, he was like, "Where can we play? Where can we play?" And he was all pumped to crash the third rail winter clinics, and then it got canceled, so he couldn't. But just finding ways for them to like come back and be engaged in something so that they feel like still part of the community is actually a way to keep them around. So
Yeah, I think making sure that one thing feeds into another. Again, I think someone mentioned this, that when people are done with beginner league, it would be a good idea to have a timed intermediate league or pickup game that they can sort of feed into. And I've seen a lot of that in the past. And the same thing with youth, right? Feed them into certain pickup games and leagues that we think might be of their particular skill set. And I think growth is always an important thing, particularly new players. And I think a lot of that does happen word of mouth. I play volleyball sometimes, and someone on my team was like, "Oh yeah, I played Ultimate, back in the day. I haven't played in a while." Said, "Hey, you should look into this, beginner league or Thursday pickup game or something like that. That starts with a lower level of commitment, and then get them to sign up for a beginner, intermediate league." So I think there are a lot of different ways, advertisement, cross promotions with other sports. I don't know, partnerships with something like Volo, or there are lots of different ways to sort of get word out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think to agree with what Katie said, I think like for you stuff like growth is super important and retention is super important, right? And growth, Like I know there's two new volunteers this year helping, or this spring, I should say, helping with a lot of youth coordination stuff, which is really exciting. And so that, hopefully helps the stuff that we're offering and like the engagement that we get to drive through youth stuff. So hopefully that helps with growth. I think for retention, there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different things we can do. Something that Blueprint, one of the men's teams, did this year. This is not their phrasing for it, but it is my phrasing for it. They had like an intern program. They had like 4 or 5 youth players that they were like, hey, like you're playing with Triu, come to like club practices of the summer, like when you're around. And there was one kid from Beacon who did it, and he loved it. And he's like playing in college this year as a freshman. And I think that sort of thing, sort of getting high school kids who are then, going to college. There's a lot of things you do in college. Maybe you play ultimate, maybe you don't, but like sort of getting that sort of building that sort of drive into it, I think helps keep them playing ultimate. And then when they come back to the city, then also like keeps them part of the community. So like maybe helping stuff, sort of organize relationships with club teams to high school programs sort of can help with stuff like that. Um, but yeah, both growth and retention are super important because if you don't have one, you're not going to have the other.
I really like the Blueprint internship. I thought that was so cool. I'm looking forward if like I think we should do things like that a lot more. I was learning about how in Seattle, right, they do a lot of like high school giving back to middle school, right, and like college giving back to high school, right, and then college and club giving back to college, right? And I just think of that entire pipeline as like it's can be two phases, right? It can be like growth can be like making it as accessible as possible, so we get like the biggest crowd, biggest number of participants, right? Just our initial funnel. But then the retention part of it is like, well, once they're in our community, right, do they have enough ways to give back if they wanted to, right? If they want to be involved more. So then the internship is a great way for them to be involved more, right? To build more areas of the community. So I'm thinking of like our high school league. Um, we have middle school observers, and our high school players would make great middle school observers, right? And there's not as much of a push as I think to like show that that's an option. That's a part-time job for them to get paid doing something they love, helping raise the middle school kids to have good spirit, right? And then that shows them what it's like to be in that position of power and kind of authority, but also like nurturing and guiding, right? And I think we can keep doing that going forward of like how can these different levels interact with each other in a way that really is like mutually beneficial. Um, so yeah, I agree with everyone, and we should focus on both. That's a good idea.
Awesome. I love to hear it. These things make me really excited as a youth person, and also generally someone who cares about this organization, but specifically with youth. I know Zach has a question. I know we're getting close to time, but Zach, go ahead.
I have to drop at 8. So is that the time for everyone dropping at 8?
Yeah, officially
Oh,
this.
okay. All right. So I just, as Ben was talking about that Click League, I remember that Click League. I started that Click League. It existed because right after COVID, especially, we had almost no DAO and DOC players, and that Click League was entirely DOM players. So it was a men's Click League, and that's why it didn't really have the staying power. DAO and DOC players started to come back in greater numbers after that, but still, I would love to run a real true mixed click league. And so it got me thinking specifically about the declining growth of DAO and DOC players. And so I just wanted to see if anyone running for the board had any ideas onto as to how to bring more women and non-binary players into our community. We've seen a big growth of women's sports nationally and worldwide over the past few years, but if I know things about movements, like that, if we don't perpetuate them, they kind of fade away. And it's very important to all of us to have all genders represented as much as possible in DiscNY. And so do you have any ideas? Like, what is your approach to bringing more down players into the space?
So I guess the first thing I would say is that that was definitely an issue in San Diego, as it is, I'm sure, most places, trying to get ratios where everyone feels comfortable. And I think, there are certain strategies for leagues of, discounts or, bring a friend, you both get certain amount off or even free membership, or just blank for a second. Having, leaving 50% of the spots open just for DAO and DOC players, doing partnerships with women's professional teams, doing clinics during like their halftime was something I think we did in San Diego. So I think there are a lot of ways to try and promote it. I think it's the issue everyone I think kind of runs into, but there are definitely certain ways to try to increase the membership and outreach more.
I think when it comes to increasing, I think there are a lot of those sort of ways, right, where you get discounts and other things to bring people in on a systemic level. Um, I think the things that people, especially down dock players, really want is community, right? And also spaces that are built for them, with them in not just as an afterthought, but them primarily as the thought. Um, for instance, I've been running with DiscNY over the January these DAO Doc clinics every Saturday at McCarran, and even though the weather has been frigid, it's been snowing, it's been crazy, we've gotten more and more players since New Year's. We had 14 the first week, 15 the next, 20 plus the third week, right? And that's like middle winter, like the coldest you can get. Snow and coming down, burying the cones on the field. You can't even see it, but we're still out there. Everyone's abandoned us. There are little kids making snowmen, right? Like that's commitment, but that's a space purposely made for them. And people came out because it's community, because we structured it in such a way that it made sense, that people felt valued, right? So I think it really needs to be a primary focus of whatever programming we do, to how to make it as accessible, communicate the low cost, and right, and really just like grow that part of our community, because it affects the rest of our community, right? Like if we can't have enough DAO Doc players, then we can't have a true mixed click league, right? And we need those players so that the experience is more fun, right? That the mixed experience is a better experience. Last thing I'll say about it is I think like even if you're a program that's not explicitly built around DAO Doc players, your rules, your internal systems need to be focused with their enjoyment in mind, right? And I think that's where pickups really kind of like either hit the mark or they don't. If it's a good pickup, then the playtime of the down dock players is respected, they're included, and they overcome this like just base level bias of like you have to prove you're good to get thrown to, right? The best pickups are the ones where that's not the case. Like everyone's treated as an available player. But that comes from like really good leadership and enforcement of norms of a pickup to make everyone feel included, and that's hard to do. Shout out to David Chen for making a really good Manhattan pickup space. Um, so those are just two of my takes on it.
Cool. Thank you all. Don't feel any pressure to answer if you haven't. Thanks for those your responses.
I am gonna move us along as we're getting close to time. Um, there's any like in the next couple minutes rapid things that anyone wants to get out or make sure they say. The floor is open. Bucky, if you have questions you want to put to us, either with your voice or in the chat, please feel free. And then I'll talk about next steps after that.
You're all great, and I love you for doing this.
Otto, go ahead. Thank you, Bucky.
Thanks, Bucky. Okay. One thing I wanted to talk about, I thought about this when there were questions around board commitment and amount of time. One thing that the board has taught me has been some professional development skills. I know Matt McLaughlin will kind of has or at least I've had these conversations with him about this impact that the board has had with me, because you deal with a lot of different circumstances, a lot of different people, and a lot of different roles, right? Sometimes with a new board member, you may help them out. I know I got a lot of advice and was taught a lot of things both by someone like Colin, but also someone like Zach and MCL when I started on the board. And so and I like to think that I've been able to help out in the other way as well. So you learn that, you learn how to deal with or work with others, you learn how to kind of find your spot, which I think is one of the cool things that Zach talked about. There's no, there is a president, there's a secretary, and then kind of this other category, but everybody really does a little of everything. And so a lot of skills are needed. And if you kind of find, there's a lot of possibility, activity to activity, task to task for people to find their niche and develop new skills as well and kind of challenge yourself, right? Everybody here is, we're doing it on our own time. And so you get out of it what you put into it, and you can learn a lot. In addition to, kind of hitting these goals that we all have for the community. I think it's a really good way to learn skills that you can use for in other parts of your life, both on the field and off the field, professionally, and anything else like that.
Cool. Thanks, Otto. Any last things? Great. So thanks everyone again. So the next steps in this, we have a slightly altered timeline from what we originally announced. So today is January 20th. This is the official Meet the Candidates Zoom. Our voting period is January 25th through the 31st. There will be a Google form. You'll get it in your email. You'll see it on the Instagram. You'll probably see it on our website. To be eligible to vote in the DiscNY board election, you must have participated in some form in a DiscNY event within the past 2 years. Youth players are eligible, I believe, is what we decided, especially if you've done Tri-U or the high school league. I need to double check that because I know we have some folks that will draw votes from those folks. I know we have some specific restrictions on youth parents. I think they have to have volunteered specifically with the program. If they were a chaperone for your high school team, let's chat. So that will be open through the 25th. Sorry, from the 25th through the 31st. We have a 4-day voting verification period. And then on February 5th, the elected candidates will be confirmed and the new board term will begin. And we'll say goodbye to our lovely BCAP, Shannon, and Zach. Thank you so much for everything that you have done. So I will return to you all your last 3 minutes and change of this call. Thank you all so much for being here. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You know where to find us. And we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Bucky.
Thanks, Bucky.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bucky. Thanks,
So
everyone.
welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.